You have to ask this afternoon now, I think, a reassurance force or a provocation? The Franco-British initiative for Ukraine presents challenges. The joint announcement made by the British Prime Minister Starmer and the French President Emmanuel Macron this afternoon has caused both excitement and anxiety in European cities and beyond. A major change in the West's approach to the war and its aftermath is seen in this decision to send a European military presence in post-conflict Ukraine, known as a reassurance force. What's been suggested? Macron has announced in Paris that where there's 30 different countries have been brought together, that the composition of a multinational force will be decided in 4 weeks, leading the initiative of the French and the United Kingdom, who have dispatched military representatives to Kyiv to confer with Ukrainian colleagues over deployment locations and operating requirements. And the force won't be deployed on the front lines or take the place of Ukraine's armed forces. Rather, it's intended to prevent additional Russian aggression by protecting vital infrastructure such as ports, power plants, and administrative hubs. And instead of escalating the conflict, the focus is on a post-conflict presence that is presented as a contribution to the lasting peace. Macron and Starmer have been clear in portraying this deployment as a sign of European determination. This is Europe uniting behind the peace process on a scale that we haven't seen in decades, said Starmer. If Russia attacks it, it's attacking us. And that's what Macron has said. The basic reasoning is that Europe needs to show sustained commitment, whereas the US negotiates ceasefires and varies its backing, giving Ukraine the comfort that the West won't desert it throughout the precarious transition from conflict to peace. That is the epitome of strategic reassurance. But the political fault line is demonstrable. Some nations, particularly Italy, Germany, and Poland, have expressed reluctance to join, while others, like Denmark and the Baltic states, have indicated their desire to do so. Chancellor Scholz was clear that it was too soon to even consider such a force. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, was also doubtful. So why is there hesitation at all? There are 3 reasons. First is the fear of a Russian response. Moscow has already denounced the proposal, saying that confrontation with NATO is all this force represents, and referring to it as a direct military intervention and interference. Second, there's a lack of clarity. Neither the EU nor NATO have publicly mandated this force, and being informal, voluntary, and possibly turbulent makes it fall into a murky area legally and militarily. What's its objective? Then there's US hesitancy. Many nations still reluctant to take action without American assurances cannot necessarily subscribe to this, which is almost in defiance of Donald Trump and his ceasefire negotiations, and particularly the ambivalence, the fluctuation of Washington's support. Ukraine's attitude is appreciative but cautious, and while supporting the action, President Zelensky has been cautious to establish limits. He's emphasized the importance of having a clear plan in recent remarks to Le Figaro, including troop numbers, commitments, and the duration that the soldiers would remain on Ukrainian soil. Ihor Zovka, his advisor, has taken a more direct stance, saying we don't need peacekeeping missions, the determination to fight, not the numbers. In other words, dedication is more important to Ukraine than symbols. Instead of significant weaponry transfers and financial assistance, that's what it does want. It doesn't want European soldiers. It wants European soldiers. It doesn't want European soldiers instead of serious arms deliveries and financial support. It's a subtle rebuke, a warning that assurances alone cannot replace the hard power needed to keep up the fight against Russia. And then, of course, it's a calculated risk. It's not necessarily a provocation. Even if European troops are stationed at some distance from the front lines, Russia might consider that they are provocative. But in reality, this isn't an escalation. This is an insulation, a way to signal that any new Russian offensive will be met not just by Ukrainian resistance, but by European resolve, European commitment. In contrast to Putin's present campaign, Russian soldiers would have committed an act of war against NATO countries if they attacked these units. And that, of course, is the worry. And the invocation of Article 5 NATO. The main idea is to use presence rather than confrontation to discourage aggression. But there are implications for security and for strategy. If the Franco-British plan is successful, it might well solidify European military coordination outside of the NATO umbrella, begin the architecture of a European post-war security order, and set a model for voluntary ad hoc alliances in future crises, where there needs to be an adaptable, resolute, and focused European response, determined, not led by Washington, but led by European capitals, by European nations. But the failure here, whether through half-hearted commitment or a bungled deployment, could embolden Russia and deepen divisions within Europe. Peace without preparation is just war postponed, Clausewitz once said. So despite its flaws, it's this proposed reassurance force may be deeply compromised, may be imperfect. It may be imperfect and premature. It's controversial, and it's not necessarily that effective. On the other hand, it's a rare example of a Franco-British alignment of European leadership that tries to fill the strategic vacuum left by a hesitant, a reluctant, an unreliable America. Is it a provocation to Moscow? Inevitably. But it's also a pledge to Kyiv, and history tells us that peace must be upheld, not merely declared. And this is at least one step forward. I don't know whether it's the right step to take. I'm not sure that boots on the ground should be stepping at all.